Welcome to Sleep with Myth, where ancient stories whisper you to sleep. If you feel the calm, leave a like and join us for more legends beneath the stars. In the time before time, there was only stillness, no sound, no breath, no light, only an endless sea, a sea without beginning and without end. They called it none. It stretched forever in every direction, a vast formless water, silent and eternal. The waves did not move. The air did not stir. The world was asleep, dreaming without a dreamer. There was no sun, no moon, no sky, only the quiet pulse of nothingness. And yet, within that stillness, a thought began to shimmer, a single spark of awareness, a whisper, soft as breath. Something in the darkness wished to be known, to see itself, to exist. From that wish, a shape began to rise, slowly, softly, as if the waters themselves hesitated to break their silence. A mound emerged. It rose from the endless sea, dripping with the coldness of eternity. This was the first land, the beginning of everything. Upon that mound, light began to gather. It shimmered faintly at first, then brightened, spilling gold upon the still water. And from that light, a presence took form. He was both shadow and flame. He was the first god, the one who created himself. He was Atum, alone, yet complete, silent, yet aware. He opened his eyes and the darkness retreated. Atum stood upon the mound, gazing over the endless ocean. He felt the chill of the void and the warmth of the light within him. For a long time, he said nothing. He simply existed, the only thing that was. He breathed, and his breath rippled across the waters. He exhaled again, and the breath became Shu, the god of air and space. He sighed once more, and the mist around him condensed into Tefnut, the goddess of moisture and rain. From his breath came the wind, from his tears came the rain. And thus, the first rhythm began. The waters of noon stirred for the first time. Ripples spread outward, carrying life upon their backs. Atum looked around and saw that he was no longer alone. He smiled, a soft, weary smile, and whispered, "From me, all shall come." The wind carried his voice, and the waters answered with a sigh. Light touched the horizon. A faint glow spread across the sea, and from that glow came the first dawn. The first morning had come. The world took its first breath. Atum gazed at the light, and for a moment he saw his reflection upon the water. It shimmered like another being, a twin born from his image. He reached out to touch it, but the ripples scattered the vision into light. Still, he smiled. For in that moment, he understood something new. The power of creation was also the power of reflection. Everything born from him would carry a part of his light, and through them, he would always remain. The warmth of the first dawn spread across the water, and the air began to move freely. Shu stretched his invisible hands, lifting the mists above the land. Tefnut danced upon the waves, turning mist into dew. Together, they filled the world with motion. The still ocean began to breathe. The silence was gone. The world was alive. Atum watched as his children moved through the new world. Their laughter became the sound of wind. Their tears became rivers and clouds. He felt joy and sorrow. For even though they were born from him, they were not him. They were separate. And in their freedom, he felt loneliness once more. He whispered to the waters, "Though I am all, I am alone within it." The waters whispered back, echoing his sadness. Yet in their reflection, he saw movement, tiny sparks within the depths, the promise of more life to come. That whisper became thought. That thought became dream. And the dream became creation. The world would no longer sleep. The darkness had been broken, and in its place came light, sound, and time. Atum looked up to the newborn sky. He saw the faint blue of the air above, the shimmer of water below. He raised his hands, and the air between them trembled. He spoke softly, his voice the first echo of divinity. Let there be distance, so that all things may breathe. And thus, space was born. The air expanded, the heavens lifted, the world gained room to grow. The gods watched in awe, for they could now move freely. Shu held up the sky, and Tefnut blessed the earth with water. Atum watched their dance, and peace settled upon his heart. And so the first day passed, not in rush or thunder, but in peace. The sun, though yet unborn, was already waiting. Its light shimmered quietly, resting upon the horizon like a sleeping child. Atum closed his eyes, and the world followed him into the first night. The stars appeared upon the belly of the sky, tiny flames within Nut, who had not yet been born, but was already dreaming. The air stilled, the waves calmed, and the God of creation rested. The hush after creation lingered, not empty, only gentle, like a room that remembers a song. From the mound a breeze rose. It learned how to move, it learned how to circle, to touch the skin of the waters, to curl and soften, to carry warmth farther than sight. Shu tasted his own breath. It was light and clear and kind. He widened the space around the mound, as if opening a curtain with two careful hands. Air became room. Room became possibility. Tefnut leaned over the world and listened. She gathered mist upon her palms. Let droplets fall back in slow silver threads. Let dew kiss the sleeping earth. Where each drop rested, the surface of the world learned how to glimmer. Atum watched them move, and the ache of aloneness loosened, like a tight knot learning to breathe. He spoke without raising his voice. He named what had never known a name. Each name became a gentle pillar, each pillar a promise that nothing would slip back into the old forever of formlessness. A pale glow reached farther, not a blaze, not a command, only a patient light that taught color how to wake. Under that light, the waters discovered edges, and the mound learned to remember the shape of itself. From the closeness of air and moisture, a tenderness opened. Shu and Tefnut brushed past one another, wind scattering veils of shining mist, mist returning with laughter to the arms of wind. From that tenderness, two more wonders stirred. First came the heaviness that could cradle, a presence steady and low, soft like a sleeping animal, strong like a promise kept. He called himself Geb, the earth. He lay near the mound, a body of valleys and gentle ridges, a heart of warmth waiting to rise. Then a vastness turned upon itself and smiled. She learned to curve, to arch, to hold without touching too much. She called herself Nut, the sky. She wore the first freckles of light upon her skin, small sparks that did not yet know the word star, but shimmered as if they always had. They reached for each other. At first, they did not know limits. Sky pressed to earth. Earth rose to meet sky. They kissed without distance, and the new world, for a moment, forgot to breathe. Shu felt the pause. He listened to the silence inside the silence, then lifted his arms between them, not to separate love, but to give it space. With the gentleness of a hand that does not wake a sleeping child, he raised Nut until her arch became a caress from afar. Geb rested below, his warmth spreading outward in slow contentment. Air flowed between them, a corridor for life, a soft hallway for every future breath. Atum watched the shape of distance and saw devotion grow stronger because of it. He whispered a truth the world would carry forever. Closeness needs room. Room keeps the heart from drowning. Shu stood, tall and careful. Nut learned to glitter without falling. Geb's chest rose and fell, a patient rhythm that would teach time how to walk. The light deepened, not brighter, richer. It discovered the color of sand, the faint greens sleeping inside the idea of a leaf, the warm red hidden in the thought of clay. Moisture gathered along the quiet slopes, drawing the first lines of a river no one had yet followed. It curved as if it remembered a path from a dream, a silver thread ready to sew shores together. Where the river's whisper lingered, the earth softened, and the scent of beginning rose. Something like rain, something like stone after a long sleep. Atum closed his eyes and listened. He did not command. He welcomed. In the welcoming, new things learned how to stay. The arch of nut brightened in places. Some sparks trembled, then steadied, as if they found small thrones in the dark and decided never to leave. One spark blinked twice, shy but faithful. Another drew a faint trail, a hush of silver across the curve of night. Geb learned how to hold coolness. The river traced his skin. Depressions became pools. Sleepy basins became the first mirrors. When he looked into them, he did not see his face. He saw patience looking back. Shu wandered through his own corridor, sometimes a long, smooth breath, sometimes a playful turn. He learned to quiet himself when stillness asked not to be disturbed. He learned to hum softly when emptiness wanted company. Tefnut returned from the far edge of the waters. She carried a story in each droplet, stories of brief, falling, and soft landing, stories of returning without regret. She let those stories sink into Geb, and Geb answered with warmth. Nut lifted one arm of her arch, and the sparks above her hand gathered in a gentle curve, like a string of pearls remembering a path. Far across, another handful formed a small gate. Between the curve and the gate, a silence stretched, a path for future travelers who would learn to read the sky. Atum spoke again, not louder, truer. Balance, he said, is not a weight that crushes. It is a feather that teaches the heart to float. A feather drifted into the open air as if it had always. The hush that had filled creation began to tremble, not with fear, but with expectation. Something vast was gathering beyond the edge of stillness. The corridor of air stretched wider, waiting for a pulse it had never felt before. A shimmer appeared, low upon the water's face, soft and circular. It deepened until it was more than shimmer, until it was warmth. And from that warmth a new being rose, calm and blazing. He carried the color of dawn in his skin, the promise of motion in his hands. His name was Ra. Atum looked upon him and knew that light had learned to walk. He spoke no command, he simply bowed his head, and the new sun lifted itself upon the curve of the sky. Every grain of air turned to gold. Every drop of water found a reflection of fire. Ra began his journey from one horizon to the other. The world tilted its face toward him, like a child discovering color. Mountains stretched their backs to feel his heat. Rivers loosened their silver tongues. The very air hummed with gratitude. When Ra reached the farthest edge, he turned his gaze downward. The light that had crowned the world sank softly into the deep. It did not die. It rested, and the first night unfolded. Not darkness as before, not the empty black of noon, but a deep velvet filled with stars that smiled through Nut's body. Their faint twinkling was the whisper of life saying goodnight. Ra traveled beneath the world, through the unseen halls of the underwaters. There he met the quiet serpent, coiled among dreams. It opened one eye, huge, ancient, patient, Apophis, born from the leftover shadows of creation. It did not hate the light. It only loved its own silence. But light and silence cannot hold the same throne. So each night they danced. Sometimes Ra burned brighter, sometimes the serpent curled closer. Each morning the same result. The light returned. From that struggle, time began to measure itself. Every victory of light became a day. Every retreat became a night. Balance was no longer a thought. It was rhythm. Shu felt it in the movement of his air, the way it warmed at noon, the way it cooled at dusk. Tefnut felt it in the changing weight of mist, how it vanished into brightness and returned with the dark. Geb felt it in his chest, rising and falling, a deep, slow breathing the world would copy forever. Nut bent lower each evening, letting her jeweled arms embrace the sleeping earth. When morning came, she lifted herself again, and the stars rolled from her skin like beads of laughter. Atum watched and understood that creation was now self-taught. It no longer needed his hand upon every ripple. He had given it memory enough to repeat beauty without command. The world spoke back to him in small ways, a sigh of air here, a shimmer of water there, as if to tell him, "We remember." He smiled, and his silence answered theirs. As days passed, Ra's journey traced a path so steady that even the unborn hearts of men would one day know when to rise. The heavens learned a pattern. The earth learned repose. Between them, life practiced breathing. In the shadowed hours when Ra descended, the serpent Apophis waited still. Its body was the measure of fear, its eyes the measure of longing. Each night the two met, and the friction between them spun sparks that became new stars. Thus, even conflict turned to creation. Atum, resting upon his mound, whispered approval. Harmony, he said, is not silence but cooperation of opposites. The words settled upon the wind like fine dust and entered every living thing. Then came sound, gentle, wandering, curious. Air learned to sing through hollows. Stone learned to echo. The world discovered music by accident and found that it healed loneliness faster than speech. Ra heard it too as he sailed the heavens. He let his light fall in slow waves, each one striking the earth with a rhythm that matched the hidden drums of water. Day became a song. Night became its answer. Shu raised his hands again, feeling the harmony between air and silence. He laughed softly, and his laughter turned into breeze. That breeze touched Geb's face, and from Geb's breath came the first dust, and from dust came the idea of soil. Seeds not yet born began to dream of roots. Moisture gathered in hidden hollows. Tefnut watched with motherly delight, for she knew that from this union of dry and wet, something would soon stand upright and call the sky its brother. Time continued to widen. Ra's journey became story. Story became memory. And memory began to shape what would come. Atum, older now in patience, though timeless in form, looked around the growing world and spoke to the light itself. "You will fade each night," he said, "and return each dawn. You will teach all things that nothing is lost, only resting." The light bowed to him, and his own reflection glimmered in every wave. He understood that his children, the air, the water, the earth, The sky had given him what he once lacked: company. He whispered gratitude into the birth of harmony and the first rest. Morning returned as if it had been promised before promises existed. Light stepped softly over the river's bends, touched the slopes that Geb kept warm, stroked the arch of nut with a tenderness that never asked for thanks. Everything awakened without hurry. Even waking learned to move like a feather on quiet air. Atum stood where beginnings like to pause. He watched the pattern rise and fade, approach and return, and felt a calm he had not known when he was alone. Creation had learned its own breath. He no longer needed to lift it with his hands. He only needed to bless its rhythm by listening. Shu wandered between earth and sky, content. He shaped nothing, and by shaping nothing, allowed everything to discover its shape. He leaned to one side and the breeze followed. He straightened and the breeze gentled. The corridor of air remembered each gesture and turned those memories into weather. Tefnut cupped water like a healer holding medicine. She let it travel as mist, as dew, as a hush of rain that fell and did not strike, that landed and did not bruise. She taught moisture how to be a visitor and a friend. Wherever it stayed, life would one day stay as well. Geb listened to the small footfalls of drops. He opened hollows where they could rest. He lifted ridges where they could begin again. He learned patience so fully that the ground beneath him felt like a promise kept for centuries. If a slope felt tired, he eased it. If a basin felt lonely, he gave it company. Nut, shimmering with 1,000 quiet lamps, watched over the world the way a mother watches sleep. She lowered nothing, raised nothing, yet every night her curve taught dreaming how to be safe. Some sparks in her veil moved closer, gathering into friendly lines. Others lingered alone, and bright lighthouses for travelers no one had met yet. From the steady turning of day and night, a new awareness rose like a soft hill in the mind. It did not shout its name, yet everything understood it at once. Harmony had been here all along, but now it lifted its head and looked around. It smiled without lips, placed a weightless feather in the middle of the world, and watched every heartbeat steady itself to match. Atum felt the feather's touch without seeing it. His chest loosened as if a long-held breath had finally been released. He realized that order did not come from his will alone. It came from the kindness with which things accepted their place. Balance was not enforced. It was consent given slowly and completely. The river learned to share itself, splitting into channels and rejoining with laughter so soft that only listening could hear it. Pools mirrored a sky that mirrored pools, and the world found comfort in being reflected. A sandbar rose where the current lost its hurry, and the sandbar stayed because staying was welcome. Bird shapes, still only the idea of wings, traced quiet arcs over the corridor of air. They did not need bodies to rehearse wonder. They wrote loops and soft signatures upon a page no one else could read, and yet everyone felt the joy of those hidden letters. Ra's path across the heavens grew sure as a hand that has practiced grace. At mid-course, he softened the light the way a singer softens a note, then let it deepen, then let it rest at the curve of evening. He disappeared beneath the far edge, and the world did not fear. Trust had become a bridge. Night crossed it tenderly. Apophis coiled in the dreaming water, immense and patient. Its gaze met the sun each night, and though their meeting carried the old tension of opposite loves, even that tension learned a gentler way. The serpent no longer struck to end. It rose to remind. Without its dark, the return of light would not have tasted so complete. From their meeting, tiny fires shook loose and climbed the belly of the sky. New stars found their places among the old. They did not rival, they joined. They did not crowd, they accompanied. Everything learned the art of belonging without pressing too close. Shu felt the lesson and gave the world a long, even breath. Tefnut felt it and poured a mist so fine that it became perfume for the morning. Geb felt it and eased deeper, cradling seeds that were still only softness, trusting that softness would one day choose form. Nut felt it and let her lamps glow a little warmer at dusk, a whisper to every creature. Rest will meet you where you are. Atum looked upon all this and understood another secret. Creation was not a single event, but a temperament, a way of being with what is. He set his staff upon the mound and did not lift it. He named the staff patience. He named the mound memory. He named the space between things blessing. News of these names traveled without words. The river curved a little kinder around a stubborn stone. The wind braided itself with silence and did not tear it. Shadows began to behave like companions rather than thieves. Even brightness learned modesty. The return of light and the song of renewal. The long night breathed softly across the world. It was not empty. It was waiting. Dreams drifted like clouds above sleeping waters. Every ripple whispered to the sky, asking if the sun remembered its path. Deep beneath the horizon, Ra stirred. He opened his eyes, golden and calm. The serpent that had watched over his rest moved aside, and for a moment darkness bowed to light. Ra rose once more, not with fire, not with pride, with certainty, as if dawn were a kindness too simple to forget. The sky grew pale, stars dimmed, not because they feared the sun, but because they wished to see the world wake. First light touched the mound where Atum slept. The water gleamed like newly polished bronze. The breath of Shu carried warmth over valleys, and Tefnut's mist turned to shimmering pearls. Each droplet became a note in the song of renewal. The river began to move again. It hummed low, a promise fulfilled. The earth answered with a sigh so deep that mountains trembled with gratitude. Geb's skin glowed, and Nut opened her great arch wide. The day unfolded with gentleness. Ra's golden hands reached across the heavens, weaving light through the soft strands of air. Every place the light touched remembered its color. Greens deepened. Sand glittered like fine dusted gold. The world blushed awake. Atum stirred. His eyes opened slowly, as though returning from a beautiful dream. He watched his children move through their duties, the sky bowing, the earth smiling, and for the first time he understood joy as something separate from creation. Joy was not the act of making. It was the act of seeing that what had been made could care for itself. He stood, stretching like the horizon, and his shadow fell across the water like a quiet blessing. He spoke, not to command, but to thank. Light returns, he said, because the world remembers. The breeze carried his words far beyond the edge of sight. The ocean listened. Even the silence beneath the surface seemed to hum. Shu felt the words pass through his body. He turned them into gentle wind, and the wind found every corner of the earth. Where silence had lingered too long, it brushed away the dust of stillness and replaced it with calm motion. Tefnut followed, wrapping the wind in silver mist. Her tears of joy fell upon Geb's chest, and wherever they landed, tiny sparks of green pushed upward, curious, alive. Nut arched higher, her laughter scattering the last fading stars. Ray's golden boat sailed between her hands, and she guided him as a mother guides a child's first step. Atum watched this play of love and balance, and knew that the pattern would outlast even him. He did not mourn the thought. He smiled. The world had learned to sing. The melody was soft but endless. Air upon water, water upon earth, light upon all. Even Apophis, deep in the underwaters, heard the music. It stirred its coils, but instead of anger, it felt curiosity. Perhaps even shadow could find peace in a song that welcomed everything. Day lengthened. Every wave of light brought warmth and forgiveness. Where there had been silence, there was harmony. Where there had been chaos, there was rhythm. Ra's journey drew its line across the sky like a brush stroke of gold, and the world followed, breathing in time. When evening came, the sun slipped again toward the west. This time, no one feared the fall. Every heart, earth, sky, water, wind, knew that he would rise again. As the first stars blinked awake, Atum lifted his gaze to the heavens and whispered, "Return and rest, each in turn. This is the promise that keeps the world alive." The stars heard, the river answered. The air carried the echo to the farthest shadows. And the world, once newborn, began to dream mature dreams.